Hi there, welcome to my channel. If you're new, I'm a current VW ID4 owner, former and potentially future Tesla owner that does EV reviews and tips. Before we begin, I used to own a Model 3, so keep that context in mind when watching, as I am not new to Tesla and will reference my old car many times throughout the video. With that, let's get started. I will say getting inside of a Model Y after not being in a Tesla for over a year and a half, you definitely sort of lose being used to Teslas because they are so different than a lot of other cars. So the very first thing I want to say, and just to get it out of the way right now, this all-wheel drive Model Y is faster than my ID4 by 3 or 4 seconds to 60, and it feels much faster than my ID4. Now I have been inside the all-wheel drive ID4, and I would still say this certainly is faster than that. On the other side, another thing that I noticed is that the suspension in this car is so much different than it is on the ID4. So to give you sort of the dichotomy there, the ID4 is very comfortable, it's very cushy, it's like driving on a little bit of a cloud where the suspension is a little loose, and so when you go over bumps, the car soaks up most of that energy versus your body. And there are pros and cons to that. This car drives much more like a hot hatch, where the steering, if you put it in standard mode, is very tight. The suspension is very tight. So when you go over a pothole or divots in the road, things like that, you're gonna feel it in your body much more so than you do in the ID4. And that is a difference. I will say whether or not that difference is a pro or a con is up to you. If you want a traditional feeling SUV, the Model Y isn't gonna give you that same experience as the ID4. But if you want an SUV that is performance oriented, has the power for acceleration when and wherever you need it, and you can take through the canyons and sort of carve them up, this is the car that you would want to consider. And it feels just like you could just twist and turn this thing like a go-kart driving through really crazy types of roads. The next thing I'd like to talk about, of course, is this 15-inch display in the middle. When I first got back into the Model Y, it was almost sort of shocking not to have the speedometer right here in front of your face where you could just look down and see it and then kind of look back up. I got so used to that on the ID4 that when I sat in this, at first the screen position felt awkward, and having the speedometer over here just felt kind of weird, just felt wrong. But I will say that now I've been driving it around for a little bit of time. I've sort of reacclimated to having the Model 3 where, again, I owned that car for an entire year, and by the end of that year, it wasn't really that big of a deal to have the speedometer over here. And since that time, Tesla has updated the speedometer location on the touchscreen, so it's much closer to your peripheral vision. As I'm looking forward right now and driving through these lights, I can take a quick glance and I can see it. It's just not straight down, it's just sort of down a little bit and to my right. That's not the end of the world. Can't really complain about that. I understand why Tesla did it. They're trying to keep costs down. They're trying to keep the cabin simplistic. I think that for most people, you're going to get used to that. So I don't really have a ton of complaints about having the speedometer on the screen, even though it is different. And even though if I had my preference, I would prefer to have it directly in front of my face. Just not a deal breaker for me is the way I would put it. And there are a few changes to the Model Y and the Model 3 since I've had them. That includes dual pane windows, a brand new center console, and all sorts of software updates. Most notably, the one that I've used and seen the most is the blind spot monitor that shows the camera when you put your turn signal on, which is really overdue for Tesla because every other car at this price point has a blind spot monitor on the side view mirrors, where the Tesla now only puts it right here at the bottom of the screen. The only feedback I have for Tesla on that is I wish the camera feed appeared at the top of the screen here, sort of next to the speedometer and not at the bottom, because I think looking all the way down here and then getting over left and right is a little more dangerous than having it up here at the top where I can just glance down and I can sort of see it. So that would be one piece of feedback I would give Tesla. I think it would be better used up here at the top. So let's talk a little bit about the cabin here. Because I will say just up front, the Model Y is quieter than my 2020 Model 3. I did not have the dual pane windows, as I mentioned. So I don't know how much of a difference that alone is making, or if they've made any other internal structural changes to kind of pad the noise out, or what they've done to laminate their windows otherwise. Is it quieter than my ID4? It's really hard to say. And the reason it's really hard to say is that the Model Y in the United States, Canada, pretty much anywhere that's not getting the made in China Model Y right now, doesn't have a parcel shelf for the trunk. That to me is just extremely bizarre. I don't know if it's a cost-cutting thing, it was a part shortage thing, but there's no parcel shelf available for the Model Y right now that you can buy. Of course, it's supposed to be coming in the United States and North America and all of that, but as of right now, the car I'm in did not come with a parcel shelf. And so what happens there is that all these sort of hollow noises when you go over bumps, or if the road's a little rocky, it just creates a hollow sound that isn't there in the ID4, because the ID4 is completely closed off in the back for the most part. So it takes sort of an empty space and it blocks that sound. In this car, you're getting all of that sound as you drive and as you go over bumps. But on a straightaway here, going 45 miles an hour, this road is relatively nice. There's no real big issues with it. The car sounds incredibly quiet. No complaints. You barely hear the cars wishing past you. I was just in an Audi e-tron. If I had to guess, and I will measure this, I would say the Audi e-tron was louder than the Model Y, especially when it comes to the cars going by you on the highway. You can still hear them slightly, but it's definitely much more muted than it was in the e-tron. Of course, the other thing that's sort of controversial with Tesla is just the minimal interior overall. And people want to talk about, oh, it doesn't have a bunch of leather, it's not as luxurious as other cars. I understand that argument, but if you guys have watched any of my videos before, you'll know that I have two things that really bug me in cars. One of those things is a lot of gloss black, which this car used to have, and Tesla clearly took that feedback and did exactly what I would want any manufacturer to do, which was to replace it with this nice dark gray matte material that doesn't shine in your face in the sun. So A+ for Tesla for taking that feedback and making that change. This center console design is so much better than what I had when I bought my Model 3 at the beginning of 2020. Since I've had my Model 3, they've added soft touch material here, padding on the sides of the center console with this stitching to it. Again, it's not real leather or anything like that, but who cares, number one. And number two, again, the most important thing to me is that when you accidentally hit your knee against this, you're hitting a soft surface that feels nice to the touch, that isn't likely to rattle over time, where if you had a hard plastic piece here like the e-tron had, for example, even though that's an extremely expensive car, I just like this design so much better. If I got to pick and choose what the interior design of my next car would look like, I would basically do what Tesla has done with the Model Y, with maybe the only exception is I include some type of screen over here behind the driver's direct field of vision, or maybe a heads-up display. This is my ideal interior, is the way I'd put it. Now, there are a couple things from a build quality perspective I'm going to bring up in a different video, and there are actually issues that I have with my personal Model 3 that I had to have corrected a few different times. And since we haven't done it yet, I'm going a little bit below the speed limit right now, about 10 miles below, no one's around me. I'm going to give this car just a nice little push of the accelerator and just let you see kind of how that feels. And I didn't push it all the way down, and that feels pretty dang amazing. No lie about that. So, no, I think that's what sells these cars more than anything is as soon as you put your foot down on the accelerator, it's like pure magic, coming straight through your foot into the vehicle. I don't know. I love it. Maybe the last thing I'll mention here on this first drive is just the visibility. What I also love about Teslas, and I'm not 100% sure what the cause of this is, but every Tesla I've ever been in, when you look out the front windshield, it's sort of like looking out of an IMAX, an IMAX screen, if you will, of the world, because I think the angle is not quite as curved back, maybe as some other cars, but it just feels like you can see so much more of the road than you can in some of the other vehicles that I've been in. Now these A-pillars are about the same size, I would guess, as the ID4. They're a little bit thicker than the e-tron, so the blind spot here is just slightly worse, I would say, than the e-tron, about the same as the ID4. But looking at the field of vision right in front of you, this is excellent, no problems whatsoever. The side view mirrors are a little small. I'm gonna measure these to see how they compare to my ID4, but I would guess that they're probably 10 to 20% smaller. So I get why they do that for efficiency, but I would say, you know, they're okay, they're adequate. And then for the Model Y, of course, given that it's a hatchback design or an SUV design, when you look out the back, you have sort of a sliver of road. It's not terrible. It's definitely better than the e-tron. It's not as good as the ID4, so it's kind of in the middle there. You should be able to see out the back just fine. No big issues there. I don't think that would turn anybody off. In summary, the cabin is quieter, it has more soft touch material, and of course, the software is even better. Though it still isn't without its faults, mainly some build quality issues that were pretty noticeable. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.